Hey there, everyone. Welcome to A Slice of Life with Kellie and Jon. And today we have a guest, Jeff Stolhand, who is a film producer, filmmaker, since the age of 9. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Jeff? And did I say your
Sure.
last name properly,
Yeah, that's fine.
Stolhand?
That's fine.
Okay.
Um, I pretty much grew up with a camera in my hands since I was like 8 or 9 years old. My dad, um, he ran the yearbook staff at the high school he worked with when I was very little, so he was into cameras and I got into
Let,
cameras.
let's let's also before we start, let's
Sure.
clarify. Not that I want to date, date you to give you an idea of how old you might be, but what kind of camera was that? Like a Super 8 or a 16
Yeah,
millimeter
I
or a video
I
camera?
started off shooting just 35 millimeter stills
Okay,
with a
35
pin.
is not bad,
Yeah,
to
with
start
a
with.
Yeah, with a Pentax, and went through high school shooting for the yearbook staff and things like that. But I started shooting. My dad found a Super 8 camera he ended up leaving the high school and began work at the college up the road. He was a professor and became an administrator, and
Was
actually
this
interesting.
down in Texas?
No, this was up in Illinois, little farm
Oh,
town. I grew up in a little farm town called Ashcombe, which had about 400 people.
Oh,
And
wow.
the nearest town was Kankakee, where my dad was at the college there working. I have a funny story with my wife. She's from Corpus, and she said, when I was in high school, we'd we'd go off campus for lunch, and I'm like, what does that mean? Off campus? You mean you left? She's like, yeah, we could go to the local restaurant or whatever. And I'm like, well, my school, if you walked outside, it was cornfields. There was nowhere to go. So, I mean, it was a very small town. So anyway, I got interested in film, and partly because my dad, he also taught literature, so he's always telling stories around the house. I didn't grow up with comic books, but my comics were El Cid and the Odyssey, and my dad was always, the Jungle Book. He was always telling stories, and he would often insert himself in the story like he was the main character. So my brother and I were always riveted with storytelling. So I got interested in filmmaking. He got a Super 8 camera from the local college and brought it home, and I started shooting film, and I've been doing that ever since, pretty much. So then I came down to the University of Texas for film school and got out of school. Couldn't get a job, so decided I'm just going to start my own company. So I did that, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Um, yeah, so you have 3 different websites, which we can, share with the viewers, share with everyone. So why 3 different websites? Are you in three
So
different businesses or?
kind of, sort of. So I've got the main company is Expressions in Video. That's the company I've had for the last over 20 years with my wife. We do 3 basic things. We do a lot of archiving of media. So if you have old film, videotapes, we archive that to digital files for families and companies and corporations. We transferred all of the Evil Knievel home movies for the Johnny Knoxville documentary that was on TV a while back. We've done work with the Austin History Center and the LBJ Museum, and obviously, a lot of families who are just wanting to keep their memories. So we do that. We also do corporate and commercial productions. So I have written and directed or edited for companies like Dell and Sonic and Capital One and
Oh, wow, that's
yeah,
huge.
yeah, USAA down in San Antonio, just places like that. So we do a lot of commercial and corporate work, and then we do TV and some film work, some independent film work. So the Expressions site, expressionsinvideo.com, that's the main company. I have a personal website just for the filmmaking side of it. I have a manager, a literary manager out in LA that shops scripts around for me. And so that website is more the filmmaker site. And then the other side is for a podcast that I do about storytelling and filmmaking. So that's why we have 3 sides.
Wow, yeah, it makes sense. And you're really busy. Yeah, the one I saw, it had a director's reel. So you direct,
Yep.
you're more than just a filmmaker, you're director and you write.
Yeah. I write and direct and produce, mostly produce out of necessity, but I would rather hire uh, more competent producers. But sometimes on small films, you get reeled in to do everything. But indie film is a multi-hat wearing kind of job. So just by necessity, you end up doing a lot of different things. But yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Sure. I mean, I know as a independent publisher where I publish all of my books, we are the warehouse. We are the accounts receivable, accounts payable, promotion, everything that a publishing company would do.
Yeah, you have to be. I mean,
We have
Yeah.
to do
you
that.
have to
You
do it
know,
on your
all.
own.
sometimes my garage is more of a warehouse than a garage.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of small businesses, the internet's opened up the whole world. But if you're just starting out, I had a greeting card company and the same idea. My
Oh, interesting.
apartment, I would point and go, this is the shipping department. This is, the creative team where and it was all me doing everything. Sales
Right.
department and this and that. And yeah, because you have to do it all on your own. That's just how it works. So, but I think being creative, I don't think I think it just comes natural when you're creative and you learn all the other steps to it. You might not like them, but you so want to share. You want to
Right.
share what you've
Well,
done. You put
and-
all that work into it, so it kind of gives you the incentive to learn.
I'm sure you found that
promotions.
it was all a necessary evil. Your end result was you wanted to make films.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to write books. That means I tried to get a literary agent. And when I wanted to get these books out, it wasn't happening. So I decided to do it on my own. I'm sure the same situation happened to you. You knocked on a few doors. You probably knocked on many doors. Proverbially, whether it was emails or actually knocking on the doors or phone calls, you realize, maybe it's going to be easier to just get this or do it all myself. And you learn everything you needed to do. I felt that I was fortunate in being able to promote my product solely because, and I've said this in other interviews, and this isn't about me, but it might work. It might be the same for you. It worked for me to be able to promote my books and book tours because years ago, back in the 70s and 80s, as a musician, before the internet, there was no way to promote your band other than in the local newspapers or getting the word out that you were doing this. So when it was time to book a tour across the country, it wasn't that difficult for me. Where the average writer had a problem doing that because they never had experience in planning weeks or months ahead, booking something geographically.
Yeah.
And how do you do it? What do you do to set up a reading? That was my situation. In yours, you probably had to deal with distributors and everything else regarding your films. And how do you do it?
Well, and it's all.
When we briefly talked, I think we talked about film festivals, how you get your films into those.
Sure. Yeah. I want to talk about festivals in a second. I was just going to say, and this may be true in your case. I know it's true with film production. A weird thing happens because even on a small film, we just finished shooting a film up in Chicago, south of Chicago, in the hometown where I grew up in. And once a project starts and it becomes real, even if it's a small micro budget indie, people start coming on board. They want to be part of something that's happening, and that may be the same case. And when you're talking about book readings and things like that, even though it might be like I said, a micro budget film, people want to get involved. And once it becomes real, they're like, I want to be a part of this. We ended up getting a DP who had done a lot of work with Netflix. He just happened to be in between projects, and he's like,
what a DP. I know Kelly knows.
The director of
who are watching may not know. So hit that.
Yeah, the director of photography, the cinematographer. He's the one who shoots the movie. And once the thing started pre-production, we got going. People were just attracted to the project. And next thing you know, we had a much bigger cast and crew than we expected to have on a small budget film. But getting back to festivals, I've been really lucky because the first movie I did actually won the Austin Film Festival, and that opened up a lot of doors. Mm-hmm. The second film I had screened premiered at Slam Dance, and I had another film. I've been at South by and Austin Film Festival and festivals all over the country, and they're a great way to promote yourself and network. I think the tricky thing nowadays is there are a ton of festivals out there. There are so many. And so you really, if you're a filmmaker and you're trying to figure out how to manage film festivals, I think you just have to build a strategy. Like for me, what I do, obviously the first thing is you pick all the big festivals. Obviously, that's an easy one. You can just do a simple Google search as to the most respected festivals. It's the Sundances and the Slam Dance and South by and Austin and Telluride and things like that. And those are the harder ones to get into because so many people are trying to get into them. But you gotta shoot for the brass ring. The second thing is, I think looking at niche festivals or genre-based festivals. I just did a short film that was like a horror thriller, and so I actually targeted. I wanted to connect with the audience that likes those movies, so I tried to target genre festivals like the San Diego Horror Film Festival, for example, or something like that. And that's great for filmmakers who, if you have a fantasy film or an animation or something that falls easily into a genre, you can look at those types of festivals, Fantastic Fest, or our podcast is covering the Portland Festival of Animation and Technology. That's a great festival if you're into animation and high tech kind of films. So that's another thing to do. I think also looking for festivals that have a good reputation and have a good audience, whether it be fans or whether it be people in the industry. I just went to the Santa Clarita International Film Festival a while back. It's a newer festival, but it's a great festival. It's really well run. It's just, Santa Clarita is just north of LA, so a lot of industry folks go out there. So looking for festivals like that, the Valley Film Festival is another great festival. So yeah, I think if you just build a strategy and do the research and, instead of just blast it out to everyone, because you can spend a lot of money and you're going to hit a lot of festivals that may not be right for the film you've got. So a little research helps, and, just try to be prudent with what you're spending on festivals, but they're great networking opportunities. That was the long answer, I guess.
Well, it's very interesting though, especially to someone that might be watching that's a future filmmaker, maybe even a little kid with their dad's camera. So it gives them hope because you always think, oh, you have to make it in Hollywood, but you don't just have to make it in Hollywood. There are many other options and ways to, work your way up.
Sure.
To filmmaking. But so just to get a clear picture, what is it that you do? So you do the commercials and the business side of editing and filmmaking for money as a business, right? Supports your, and then as a filmmaker, that's your creative outlet and your passion, I would guess.
Right.
And what like how much time do you spend on that? How do you balance it all, doing everything, or is it just depend on?
Sadly, I kind of work all the time. So I guess, I'm lucky because I really enjoy what I do.
One job blends into the other.
Yeah. I was at the office today taking care of helping a gentleman edit a film, and a little hiccup came up that he wanted me to fix. So I went. I really enjoy the people I work with. I really enjoy what we do. So I kind of work all the time. So it's how I manage it. Typically I'm at the office, 8 to 4, 9 to 4. I usually write in the evenings, work on, the film stuff on the weekends and writing at night, things like that. But, you just do it when you have time to do it.
Right. Well, like we said, we talked earlier about your Super 8 camera and using 35 millimeter. I guess you were talking about photos, not
still photography. Yeah.
5 millimeter film, moving film.
Right.
Okay. But that certainly was in the mid to late 80s, maybe. And then we came into the 90s with VHS and even through the 80s. And then I don't know if you used wider than half-inch. I think was VHS half-inch film.
Yeah, VHS was half-inch. That was sort of the consumer, thing that hit back in the. Let's see, that would have been. Let me think about that. That had to be like late, 80s. 80s was VHS.
Yeah.
And then tape format started changing. You had all the corporate and commercial stuff was done on Beta SP.
They even had digital film, those little digital.
Yeah, mini DV. Yeah, they had mini DV and then.
See,
DV.
so every as long as you were in this business, expressions and video, and doing things where you had to change formats for people. Update formats,
right?
You had people with a VHS tape or beta tapes coming to you and wanting it put on maybe digital video at that time.
Right,
And
right.
then the next step was putting it onto
DVDs was the thing for a while.
early DVDs
Mhm.
at the time. And so now what do? They want it on a thumb drive?
Well, yeah, for the
How has-
archiving side of the
here's
business, yeah.
here's the question. How has technology changed over the almost 30 years or so that you've been doing this? And how has it impacted what you do?
Sure. So on the archiving side, like you said, we used to transfer old films and things to VHS. Then after that, it was DVD, and now we do everything to digital files, on the cloud or thumb drives, hard drives, things like that. On the film side, like Super 816, you can now actually do high definition transfers, HD or 2K or 4K. So the film transfers are much, much better than they were, 10, 20 years ago. So on the archiving side, that's how that's changed. On the corporate and commercial side, and even in the feature film side, I did a handful of films, on film, and now everything we shoot is Red or Black Magic or Arri Alexa, all digital. And
I
it's
don't understand Black Magic.
these are all cameras. The technology has basically come so far. I can remember I did a film. I did a film on HD when HD was first a thing, because I'd been watching the technology, and the film was so expensive. And I thought, man, things are gonna change once things go to high definition. So high definition came out. It was still very expensive. Shot a film in HD, and we actually, screened that film at a lot of festivals. We had a great festival run on that. And I remember being in an audience one time doing a Q&A, and I said, well, there's a good chance film is going to start to go away, and HD and newer technologies are going to happen. And man, people got mad. They were like, no, film is here to stay. It's blah, 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 blah. And don't get me wrong, I love film. But I said, well, but movies have always changed. You had silent
Right.
films, you had sound films, you had CinemaScope, you had color, you had, it's films have
We
always
always improve everything. Every
Yeah,
industry is always
right. We had 3D
Well,
for a while. We, now
Also,
people shoot digitally.
on the other hand, yeah, I remember back in my music business days, a local in 1982, I think it was, a local cable station who had to do public access channels. So there was a guy who filmed the local bands and stuff like that. So
Right.
they came to film us at a club, and they showed up with 5 cameras, but the cameras on top of a
Yeah.
guy's shoulder, and
Yeah.
they had cables that, like a hose full of cables that ran to some kind of a mixing board. And these guys, they were moving around on stands and everything, these huge cameras
Sure.
in 82. And now, of course, you show up, here's your camera, here's you make a movie to a degree or something like that. But it's becoming that simple to a degree.
It really comes down to the good. Well, I'll put it this way: the great thing about technology, in my opinion, is it can force you to get back to telling a good story, because that's really what it's about. I have a good friend that shoots a lot for me named Tom Hennig. I hire him all the time. He's a really good cinematographer. And I remember we were working with a client one time, and the client was trying to cut corners and thought, well, maybe I could shoot this, maybe I could do that. And Tom said, I would rather have a really good cinematographer with a VHS camera than a bad cinematographer with the best camera ever,
Best
because it's
equipment.
really about the guy running the camera. It's about they have to have a good eye. They have to know the technology, and they have to have a good eye to translate what the client wants in a corporate video, or what a producer or director wants in an independent film, translate that into something cinematic. And it's really important. So I would like to think that with all the access to new technology, it will enable filmmakers to be more edgy, and they've always been. I mean, we've always had trends, where people have taken risks. But I would like to think that with technology, you can go out and maybe take more risks, because you're not spending as much money as like doing a short film or something like that.
Right.
And hopefully it forces you to rise above the others in a film festival or in the marketplace, because you're telling a good story that people want to hear.
Mhm.
That's what I'd like to think.
Yeah, I think that's always the case with everything. I was just talking to Jon earlier today about how, podcasting. And
Right.
I'm not, when I first started doing it, I did, we have a mutual friend. I did a podcast with Kimber Westervelt, and I was trying to convey to her, it's not a show. It's not a, late night interview talk show. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be polished. You have glitches here and there, and you leave them in. I mean, you just, make it real and genuine. As long as it's genuine, you're not phony and
Right.
it's not
Right.
canned and planned and everything. And I was telling Jon, every once in a while, one of my dogs will bark in the background or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's what happens. And I was watching CNN the other night, and there were 4 people doing Zoom calls talking about something. And one of the ladies' dogs were barking in the background. And I said, this is CNN. I love it that we've gotten to the point that we're that real. You're in somebody's house, you're interviewing somebody in their house, and it's that real. So I feel like as technology's improved, it's also allowed us to become, more genuine again, instead of everything so phony.
No,
Although
that's
reality
true.
TV is not really reality.
It's really not real, but
Yeah.
but yeah, we interviewed on our podcast an actress, and she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "I'm trying something new. I'm trying to resist." How did she put it? Resist the urge to always be a perfectionist, because she said it gets in the way of getting things done. You can go down the rabbit hole of trying to make it so perfect that you never finish anything. And she basically said, I'm just doing this thing where if I'm happy with it at this stage, I'm going to put it out to the world, and that's what it's going to be. And I thought that was interesting, because I tend to become very perfectionistic. Is that a word? And that stuck with me because it can prevent you from getting things done, getting your podcast done. You could worry so much about the right idea or the right camera or the right whatever, that you become frozen and just do all your research and never get to the point of actually doing your independent film or your short film or your podcast. So
Yeah, I think it's always, I'm in marketing, and every job I've ever done probably led me to be a marketer, because I was always the one marketing, like doing the marketing, whatever business I'm in, I turn it into, my job becomes the marketer. And I always look at things from the point of view of the customer, the consumer, the person looking in, or the viewer. And I think really it boils down to touching people's hearts or their funny bone,
yeah.
or something that touches them with a message. And that's what every film aims to do. And of course, marketing is all about reaching people.
And even in the corporate
Message.
and commercial world, we had great success for a while, when we were doing a lot. I say for a while, we're still doing it, but
Yeah, you've had a lot of success.
I was working with a gentleman named Zane Rutledge. He and I were writing partners for a while. We did a lot of corporate and commercial work together, and we were having so much luck because we either wrote stuff that made you cry or made you laugh.
Yep.
And we sort of stepped out of the typical corporate world where it was very very
Sterile.
it can be, yes, it can be, it can, and all these corporations, they have branding departments, which they should have, and you want to stay within brand. But branding, if you stay too tight to brand, this is my opinion, you can again be locked in fear of taking chances. We did a couple of corporate videos that were really out of the box, and that got us a lot of work because people were like, this is really, I'm really entertained. I had to write a project one time, and the client had provided the script, and it was very technical. And I was like, and they're like, we've seen your corporate work. We want this to be entertaining. I'm like, this is impossible. It's not going to happen, because we had to include so much data that I'm like, this is not going to work. And Zane and I were trying to figure this out. And finally I said, let me just walk away and think about this. And suddenly it dawned on me. I thought, well, if the information can't be entertaining, we'll make the speaker entertaining. So we created this wildly kind of crazy, egotistical sort of, character who was going to be the spokesman. And we hired this guy who was very funny. And he was doing all this corporate speak, and it was so hilarious because of the way he did it. And we had a lot of colorful language, and, the way he would turn a phrase. And, we cracked it by just saying, okay, the content is going to be what it is. The guy delivering it is going to be hysterical. And so you have to think of things like that sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, I've had to tell my boss, just reel me in if I get too far out there, but I'm one to push the limits. So,
Sure, sure.
in my marketing, I do marketing for a bank. So it's
Oh,
very
wow.
important to be, reputable and have your customers feeling secure that you're serious. But, I try to push it with humor. And, of course, we're very,
And trust the client, the
emotional.
audience wants to feel like they know you. They want to feel like
Yeah.
you build
Yeah.
trust, and you do that by
Yep.
doing a more intimate
Yeah.
type of marketing
Mhm.
campaign or commercial.
Yep. Yeah. I would say I've shaken things up a little bit and pushed the limit.
Yeah.
And it's worked out. I mean, it's been, we've gotten a lot of good responses. So, that's what I like, coming up with those ideas and how to deliver the message. That's really what it is. How do you
And
deliver
that
the message?
that probably gives you the most pleasure when you're
I
creating.
love my job. When you were saying you
Yeah.
love your job, I work all the time too. They don't ask me to, they don't push me. And I work on the weekend and I work late into the evening. And, so part of it is my type A personality wanting to get things done. I don't like things hanging over my head. But then I'm the one that comes up with all these ideas. And, I've had bosses tell me, well, then stop coming up with all these ideas if you don't want to do them. It's like, what do you want me to do? You're the one that keeps coming up with the ideas. So yeah, that's what I wish everybody would find that, in their life, that they could find something that doesn't feel like work. Cause they always say, find your
Right.
passion, but not
Right.
everybody, has, and I think it's the creative world. If you find some kind of creative way,
If you
profession.
love what you do, it's not work.
Yeah.
It's,
Right. No,
Yep.
exactly. That's exactly right.
So what do you have, before we wrap it, what do you have coming up that you'd like to promote in the next few weeks?
Well, the
Or
podcast
months.
we're doing has been been really fun. It's called the Filmmaker Mixer. You can find it on Spotify and Apple and all the usual suspects, but it's a podcast about filmmaking and storytelling. We've had some great guests. We've had Barry Corbin from Yellowstone and No Country for
wow.
Old Men, and we've had Ira Deutschman, who's a film pioneer. He was involved in a lot of great films like Swimming to Cambodia and A Room with a View and some big movies like that,
Wow.
and Hoop Dreams, very popular Sundance films. We had Chris Gore from Film Thread on, so it's a fun podcast. If you're interested in talking about movies and stories and ideas and filmmaking, you can check the podcast out.
What's the name of it again?
It's called Filmmaker Mixer. So basically,
Yeah, we'll put the website up.
yeah. So
Okay.
our producer is Melody Lopez, great friend of mine. I co-host it with a filmmaker named Andrew Lamping, and Andrew was like, "We should do a podcast," and we were trying to figure out. I'm like, "Man, I don't know if I have time for that." And I was trying to figure out what we should do. And we decided just to do an interview format because we thought it would be a great way to just talk to people and hear their stories. And
Yeah.
we had just come off a bunch of film festivals for a short film, a couple of short films. He did one and I did one. And at film festivals, you're always networking. And so we were thinking this should be sort of a kind of the same thing, like a film festival networking kind of podcast. And I was talking to our composer, Stephen, who has done a lot of music for us, Stephen Bennett, great film composer. He was going to do our little intro music. And he said, well, what's the tone? I said, it's not a dinner, it's more of a mixer. And then we said, oh, we'll just call it Filmmaker Mixer. So that's how that started.
That's cute.
So we're doing that. What else? We just finished this film. The working title is Nightfall. It's going to be a few months down the road. We're still in post on that. It's a film that Andrew and I wrote together. He directed it and I helped produce it. Shot that up in south of Chicago. So that'll be coming out, but that's probably good 6-7 months down the road. What else? I just, I don't know. That's about all I've got right now.
That's
Yeah, to
okay.
me, it sounds like
We'll
you've
be here.
got a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot going on.
Yeah,
And,
when you have something else, just let us know. We'd be happy to
Sure.
have you on. You're
Yeah.
a good interview.
Yeah. And we'll share all of your websites.
Sure. Well, appreciate it.
And let everyone know that where they can find you, and if they need some of your services or they want to watch your podcast. You've had
I'll be
tremendous, I
using
think
your
you've been very
service.
humble because you've had a lot of, when I'm looking through your websites right now, I've got them all pulled up. You've had a lot of success. So, we're very thrilled to talk to someone of your caliber in the filmmaking industry. We both know a lot of people in the industry. I've come from the Hollywood, the acting world.
Oh, no
So
kidding. That's
I've been there
interesting.
for a long time, and
Where are you at now? Where are you based?
I'm in Wyoming.
Oh, nice.
I don't know how I ended up here.
She bought that 400-acre buffalo ranch
No.
after
Well, I'm
working in
such
LA
a
for
city
a few years.
person. And people I'm sure roll their eyes at me when I ask dumb questions because I am total city person. But I was on my way to Vegas and I ended up here. My sister lives here. And so anyway, I like to be living
It's
here.
beautiful country up there.
But it's beautiful and the weather is I want to say bearable. Everybody thinks Wyoming, oh, freezing cold winter. It's bearable. The sun is so hot that even in the winter, the elevation's so high that you're close to the sun. I mean, I've been outside in my backyard in the snow in a tank top and sweatpants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not for long. I mean, you don't stay there long, but the sun just warms you. It just beats down on you and warms you, and it is beautiful.
Very good.
So yeah, but anyway, that's
Well,
where I am now.
Thank
John's
you,
in New
Jeff.
Jersey.
There you go, Jeff. Now you're interviewing her. That's very good.
And where are you, Jeff? You're in
I'm in
Texas?
Austin, Texas.
Austin.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay.
There you
Okay.
go.
Well,
Well,
much success to you, continued success, and we'll look for your films too. I have a couple friends that follow the festivals. They love slam dance. One of my friends, I used to made the general manager of a newspaper, and he was my editor, and he goes to slam dance every year. Like that's his highlight of his year. So
there you
I
go.
will have to tell him that I met somebody who's had a film there. What
very
was
good.
the
Well,
film?
I'm sorry.
What film did you have at Slam
There's
Dance?
a film called What I Like About You. It was a little romantic comedy we did. I've done a couple of romantic comedies. I did a couple of thrillers, a little kind of all over the map. The one we just finished is a horror film. So I just kind of like everything.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, let's stay in touch. I
Okay.
appreciate the invitation.
Sure.
Thank
Sure.
you.
You've got our
Yeah,
email addresses
absolutely.
and yeah, let us know if you want to come back and you have something you want to talk about, and we'd be glad to share it with our audience.
That'd be
Anytime, or
awesome.
if there's anything we can chat with you about, projects or whatever. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you
Have
so
a-
much for your time. Thanks for joining us today, Jeff.
All right.
Thank
Great
you.
meeting you. You guys take care.
Take
You
care.
too. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All views expressed in this video belong to Kelly Nicholson, John D'Amore, and guests. These discussions do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which they have been affiliated now or will be in the future. The opinions expressed are solely theirs, and since they are critically thinking human beings, these views are subject to change, subject to revision, and subject to rethinking at any time. These conversations are not meant to be taken as advice and are only for the purpose of entertainment. All statements may be based on hearsay and not necessarily valid proof of any claims in this video. It is not our intention to teach or advise on any topic. Unless otherwise noted, all photos are public domain.
Thanks for watching A Slice of Life with Kelly and John.